The turquoise waves curled onto the powder-white sand as the golden sun dipped toward the horizon, stretching long, liquid shadows across the intimate seaside gathering. A soft breeze carrying salt and jasmine drifted through the air, brushing the edges of ivory parasols and tinkling the crystal chandeliers dangling from driftwood arches. My granddaughter, Lily Carrington, stood at the water's edge in a lace gown that shimmered like moonlight on the ocean, every bead catching the dying light. Her laughter, bright and jubilant, mingled with the rhythmic crash of surf and the distant strum of a lone guitarist. Nearby, her new husband, Trevor Monroe, in a perfectly tailored ivory suit, lifted his champagne flute and offered me a slow, disdainful smile. His voice, smooth as aged scotch, cut through the festive murmur, $20,000, Grandma, or you stay invisible tonight. A ripple of nervous titters passed among the guests, college friends in linen dresses, corporate bigwigs in designer polos, each calculating whether to sip champagne or glance my way. My own blood, the sweet girl I'd read bedtime stories to, offered no protest. Instead, she leaned into her husband and murmured, "Or you can join the 80 and over assisted living crowd," her words a gentle echo of his cruelty. I raised my glass, the cool crystal cool against my palm, and took a measured sip. The bubbles fizzed on my tongue, masking the bitter taste of betrayal. Their entire charade hinged on my apparent fragility, a retired librarian, living on a modest pension, relegated to knitting circles and crossword puzzles. They toasted my small pension as though it defined my worth. But they didn't know that for 2 decades I had built something far greater in silence, a billion-dollar biotech empire, Nova Gene Labs, forged through midnight experiments and quiet tenacity. Tonight, as the sky blazed violet and gold, their laughter sealed their own fate. Every insult, every condescending glance, was catalogued in the secure vaults of my hidden company. As the ocean breeze carried their mockery across the gilded sands, I felt a spark of anticipation ignite in my chest. If you've ever been dismissed, discarded, or quietly underestimated by those you loved, stay with me. This isn't just a family squabble, it's a high-stakes lesson in patience, precision, and payback. Sometimes the gentlest voice in the room hides the sharpest blade, and this sunset marks the moment their world begins to crumble. 20 years ago, I was Dr. Celeste Morgan, a bright-eyed geneticist in a cramped university lab, dreaming of a world free from the terror of rare diseases. My bench was stacked with pipettes and petri dishes, the hum of incubators a constant lullaby through sleepless nights spent chasing elusive breakthroughs. At Meridian Biotech, my proposals for targeted gene therapies were dismissed as impractical fantasies by senior scientists in expensive suits. I watched them sip stale coffee in polished conference rooms, patting each other on the back while I logged my hypotheses in dusty grant applications that went nowhere. When the final federal grant evaporated, colleagues urged me to accept a staff scientist role. "It's safer," they cooed. But I refused to abandon my research. If the mainstream wouldn't believe in me, I would build my own path. Using every penny I'd saved from moonlighting tutoring students, I quietly assembled a small team in an unremarkable warehouse on the city's industrial edge. There, under flickering fluorescent lights, I founded Nova Gene Labs. Patents slipped through shell entities named for constellations. Funding filtered via discreet offshore trusts. I recruited a media-savvy CEO, Vanessa Hartley, whose silver tongue and polished interviews kept press and investors focused on her brilliant facade. Never suspecting she was merely the public face of my vision, inside Nova Gene, 5 executives believed they were writing the company's destiny. Ross Whitman, marketing director, spun glossy ad campaigns promising miracle cures. He had neither data nor prototypes to back. In his corner office, he toasted future valuations with venture capitalists, blissfully ignorant of the empty slide decks in his inbox. Simone Alvarez, CFO, manipulated the books, rerouting hefty consulting fees into overseas accounts she controlled. Late at night, she'd clink ice in a glass of scotch, celebrating bonuses that should have funded our gene editing trials. Dion Price, CTO, held the keys to our bioinformatics servers but treated them like a side gig, selling proprietary data to shadowy startups he claimed as personal projects. In the dead of night, I watched cybersecurity logs flicker with his unauthorized downloads. Fiona Chen, head of HR, was a master of hush. She buried harassment complaints and safety incidents in so many digital files that no one dared dig deeper. Marcus Lyle, legal counsel, shredded internal memos and whistleblower reports, convinced that his leather-bound shredding machine could erase every trace of wrongdoing. Each gala dinner and stock option windfall fed their arrogance. In candlelit ballrooms with live quartets, they toasted my supposed retirement, the fall of Dr. Morgan. They didn't see the irony. While they wrote speeches about my exit, I was orchestrating their undoing. Across the street from their lavish headquarters, my covert command center hummed with activity. Nadia Kim, once my lab partner, now chief operating officer and keeper of our encrypted vault, oversaw a network of private investigators, cybersecurity experts, forensic auditors, and legal analysts. She traced Ross's secret weekend escapades in Monte Carlo, captured Dion's midnight file transfers to offshore drop zones, and flagged Simone's complex web of shell corporations. HR logs secretly recorded Fiona dismissing a lab technician's concerns about safety protocols. Digital forensics reconstructed shredded memos, implicating Marcus in a conspiracy to conceal decades of liability, but it wasn't just evidence. I gathered, it was the story of every sacrifice I'd made. I remembered broken sleep, my daughter's school recitals I missed, and the tattered lab coat I patched again and again when funds ran dry. I remembered the hospital visits when I donated plasma to raise lab supplies money, the nights I collapsed on a threadbare couch, manuscript drafts warm in my trembling hands. All of it was fueling my resolve. Our plan was deceptively elegant: wait until the moment they reveled in my departure, then strike. The setting would be a sun-drenched beach ceremony in Santa Monica, framed by surf and palm fronds, where my granddaughter would wed beneath a driftwood altar. There, among family and friends enjoying champagne and ocean breezes, Trevor Monroe, Vanessa's protege and now my granddaughter's husband, would toast my retirement, gleefully flaunting the company keys he believed he controlled. But as the waves lapped the shore and guests whispered congratulations, every screen, from the wedding slideshow to Vanessa's Instagram Live, would flicker. The Novagene logo would morph into a dossier of damning headlines. Ross's breakthrough trials would be exposed as fraudulent. Simone's offshore accounts would go public. Dion's data leaks, Fiona's HR cover-ups, Marcus's shredded memos, all laid bare in high-definition detail. That day, on a beach of golden sand and soft seafoam, I would reveal the true founder of Novagene Labs. They would learn that the harmless grandmother they laughed at had been the silent architect of a biotech revolution, and of their own reckoning. And when the tide finally turned, they would understand that no empire built on deception can withstand the power of a determined, underestimated visionary. At 6:30 a.m., the resort was hushed, the only sound the soft hum of air conditioning and the distant crash of surf against the shore. My phone's encrypted alarm faded into silence as I smoothed the lapels of a charcoal gray pantsuit, unremarkable. Intentionally so, before sliding my feet into simple leather pumps. The lobby lights cast long, pale rectangles across the marble floor as I passed beneath towering palms and through the grand entrance, my sandals clicking in measured rhythm. I slipped into a narrow service corridor where the air tasted faintly of sea salt and fresh linen. Fluorescent bulbs overhead hummed, illuminating rows of supply closets and shuttered staff doors. Each step brought a surge of adrenaline. Today, beneath these walls, a reckoning would unfold. I paused at the final door, fingertips grazing a stainless steel handle. My encrypted phone buzzed. Nadia's message glowed: board arriving in 90 minutes. Dossiers loaded. Presentation queued. Legal and security on standby. Beyond the door lay our hidden control room. 3 monitors flickered to life as I entered. One showed the VIP lounge where white-clad staff arranged floral centerpieces. Another tracked the bridal suite, where Vanessa Hartley, still glittering with waterproof mascara, conferred quietly with a bridesmaid. The third focused on the sand-sculpted pavilion, where white folding chairs waited in neat rows, their ribbons fluttering in the gentle breeze. The faint click of heels echoed behind me as I settled into the polished leather captain's chair. Outside, time marched on. At 7 o'clock, Vanessa drifted past the monitors, her alabaster skin glowing, her laughter soft and unaffected. She complimented silver-haired guests on their elegance, utterly blind to the trap closing around her. At 7:15, Ross Whitman swaggered into view, tablet in hand, lips curved in a triumphant grin as he practiced the merger announcement he'd deliver at today's retirement tribute. His expensive cologne must have filled the air. I felt it leak through the camera's microphone, mixing with the salt tang of Ocean Spray. 7:45 brought Simone Alvarez, phone pressed to her ear as she negotiated a phantom consulting fee, amber earrings swinging with each emphatic nod. Moments later, Dion Price arrived, his eyes flicking to an unauthorized side door, no doubt hunting profit opportunities. Fiona Chen followed, purse slung over her shoulder, her expression polite but dismissive as she scrolled through HR incident logs she'd buried for months. Last came Marcus Lyle, whose legal briefcase clicked shut before he offered a curt nod to the coordinator. I watched their reflections ripple across the glass door separating control room from corridor. They moved like dancers in an elaborate routine, convinced of their mastery. They thought my disappearance from Novagene Labs was permanent, that I would retreat into my harmless grandmother role, fading among library shelves and garden gnomes. They didn't know I held the remote that would unmask their lies. A flush of triumph warmed my cheeks. The soft glow of monitors danced across my badge, Novagene Labs, founder and chief visionary officer. I clipped it to my lapel, secure in its hidden magnet, and rose. My heart pounded, not with fear but exhilaration. Outside, the final guest settled into a chair at the edge of the pavilion. A breeze stirred the ribbons overhead. I took a steadying breath, smoothed my suit jacket, and stepped through the glass door as the unannounced host of an emergency board meeting they would never forget. The pavilion lights flickered once, then died, plunging the gathered executives into an expectant hush. A single spotlight glowed on the giant projection screen at the pavilion's center, where, just moments ago, a slideshow of family photos was set to play. Instead, crisp Novagene Labs letterhead appeared, the words "Emergency Board Convening" emblazoned in stark black type. Chairs scraped softly as heads turned, and a low murmur rippled through the room. The salty breeze off the Pacific whispered through open sides of the pavilion, carrying the distant crash of waves against sunlit rocks. Vanessa Hartley's tawny blonde hair gleamed in the last rays of morning light, but her perfect bridal composure faltered. Ross Whitman's grip on his champagne flute tightened until the crystal trembled. Simone Alvarez, mid-text on her phone, let it slip to the sand without a word. Fiona Chen pressed her palms to her knees, eyes wide. Dion Price's jaw muscles worked visibly, and Marcus Lyle straightened his jacket with a rattling tug, legal instincts already flaring. I stepped forward onto the sand-dusted wooden platform, letting the silhouette of my charcoal gray suit catch the light. My heart hammered at the edges of calm. "Good morning," I began, voice smooth and steady, carrying over the hush. "Thank you for gathering on such short notice." My gaze swept the stunned faces. "Please, take your seats." Chairs clicked as they obeyed, seating themselves like unwilling actors in a play whose ending they didn't yet know. I lifted the wireless remote. The screen blurred, then sharpened into a dossier file labeled Ross Whitman, Data Fabrication and Marketing Reports. A grid of bar charts and line graphs crawled into view, each segment a time-stamped record of falsified metrics. Annotations in bold red linked to internal emails. April 3, 9:12 a.m., Ross instructs marketing team to inflate Q1 projections by 27%. The soft sigh of dismay was barely audible, but it was there. I clicked again. "Ross, you claimed Novagene's outreach expanded 20-fold. In reality, visits plateaued." His face flushed. I let silence settle, letting each executive's discomfort fill the space. As the ocean breeze fluttered ribbon chairs, I sensed the tide turning. They thought they'd built this company. Today, they would witness how thoroughly they had misled us, and the world. 2 weeks earlier, I became April Winters, slender, slightly tentative, wiping invisible sweat from my brow as I passed through the resort lobby's glass doors. The midday sun glinted poolside, and wedding planners dashed by with clipboards. My borrowed badge swung from a lanyard, candidate, head of bioethics. Security barely glanced at it, distracted by an incoming golf cart ferrying bridesmaids. I inhaled the scent of exotic orchids arranged in towering vases and felt the electric thrill of deception pulsing beneath my calm facade. I settled into a wicker armchair beside a low fountain, the soft gurgle of water masking my recording device concealed within my clutch. My eyes tracked Ross Whitman's approach, his tailored blazer immaculate, gait self-assured. He joined Dion Price, arms folded, his phone tucked away but fingers tapping an impatient rhythm. They leaned in, voices low but biting. "She looks like she raided a librarian's clearance sale," Ross hissed, gesturing at my thrift store trousers. Dion chuckled, lips curling. Charity case, for sure. Bet she's angling for a golden parachute. Each quip sank into my hidden microphone. Nadia's remote feed archiving every syllable. Simone Alvarez drifted past, pausing to appraise my candidate materials, handwritten notes and a faded resume. Vintage aesthetic, she muttered to Fiona Chen, who smirked and whispered, amateur hour. Their whispers carried the clink of champagne glasses and the faint rustle of palm fronds overhead. I rose, offering a practiced smile. Thank you for your time, I said, voice trembling just enough to seem genuine. Ross passed judgment beneath raised brows. We'll be in touch, Ms. Winters. I nodded, stepping away, each tap of my shoe on the marble floor echoing like a countdown. As I turned a final glance, I spotted Dion slipping a flash drive into his pocket, unaware his midnight file transfers had been tracked. Back in the control room, Nadia's fingers danced across a tablet, labeling each clip. Ross, condescension. Dion, data scheming. Simone and Fiona, callous dismissal. The dossier grew heavier with every insult. I straightened my borrowed blazer, heart warming with purpose. When they reveled in my weakness, they were sealing their own undoing. Inside a curtained-off suite converted 4 final-round interviews, I sat before 3 mid-level directors, Simone Alvarez, Fiona Chen, and Marcus Lyle. The air was cool, conditioned, but damp with their overconfidence. A single lamp cast long shadows on the whiteboard behind them. I adjusted my notes, deliberately ink-blurred acronyms and half-forgotten case studies, to forge the perfect persona of a promising yet awkward bioethics candidate. Simone's painted nails tapped impatiently on the table. Ms. Winters, define CRISPR, she prompted, tone condescending. My lips wavered. See, CRISPR is clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats, I replied with a shaky breath, mixing up the order intentionally. Fiona leaned back, smirking, her silk scarf brushing her blazer. And gene drive, she asked, eyes narrowed. I paused dramatically. That's the technique, drives. Allele propagation through populations, my voice trailed. Behind the one-way glass, concealed mics captured the sniggers. Marcus cleared his throat. Interesting approach, he said dryly. My heart pounded, yet I maintained a polite nod, shoulders folding in feigned humility. Thank you, I whispered. I look forward to the opportunity. Their laughter crackled through the hidden speaker. She can't cite CRISPR correctly, Simone hissed. What did we learn in grad school? Fiona mocked. Marcus tapped pen on paper. Grammar's a mess. 20 minutes later, they rose in unison, brushing off my proffered resume. We'll pass, Ms. Winters, Simone declared, arching an eyebrow. Their departure was choreographed arrogance. I watched their heels click away, exulting in the tension building like thunder beyond the curtained walls. Pausing at the exit, I tapped my embedded recorder. The hidden lens captured their retreating backs. A single command sent the looped footage to the boardroom servers, raw evidence of their contempt, ready to ignite like lightning when the dunes shifted and the final reveal unfolded. I returned to the pavilion, the midday sun now high, casting crisp shadows beneath the white canopy. Chairs remained half empty, guests murmuring confusion, but anticipation thrummed through the air like an electric current. I pressed the remote in my hand. Instantly, the screen fractured into 5 segmented panels, each framed in crimson and labeled with a name and offense. Top left glowed, Ross Whitman, metrics fraud. An animated bar graph surged unnaturally, then collapsed under truth, actual figures annotated in scrolling text beneath. Next, Simone Alvarez, off the books consulting fees, her impeccably styled portrait juxtaposed with bank statements mapping illicit transfers to anonymous Swiss accounts. The central panel revealed Dion Price, IP theft to side projects. Patent applications rerouted to shell companies, while his smug mugshot flickered beside masked logos of rival ventures. The bottom left panel bore Fiona Chen, suppressed HR complaints. A timeline scrolled beneath her name, December 4, 2019, harassment report buried, March 12, 2020, safety incident ignored, June 5, 2021, employee resignation spiked. Fiona's expression drained as each date materialized. Finally, Marcus Lyle, document destruction appeared, shredded memo fragments reassembled digitally, complete with Marcus's signature scrawled on the header of each confidential file. A hush fell, broken only by the distant surf. I stepped forward, voice resonant. You have excelled at building Nova Jean, I intoned, each syllable deliberate, if excellence is measured by deception, greed, and betrayal. Chairs creaked as they shifted, eyes darting between panels. I clicked. Again. Termination notices, digital letters stamped effective immediately, slid across the bottom of each panel, accompanied by the soft ping of deactivated badge scanners. A red banner flashed, access revoked. Ross's face paled, Simone's hand trembled as she covered her mouth. Dion lunged forward, but security officers emerged from the shadows to flank him. Fiona sank into her chair, head in hands. Marcus struggled for a composure he'd long since lost. The waves crashed in applause beyond the pavilion, nature's own verdict on their downfall. I lowered my arm and surveyed the chaos I'd orchestrated. The board members, who'd watched from behind mirrored glass, stepped into the light, their nods of approval a final confirmation. The tide had turned. Nova Jean would rise on truth, their empire of lies had just dissolved beneath the morning sun. Chaos erupted like a symphony reaching its final, shattering note. Ross Whitman's broad shoulders heaved as he hurled his champagne flute against a support beam. The crystal shattered into glittering fragments, sending golden liquid dancing across the ivory sand. Each droplet caught the morning light, exploding into tiny prisms before sinking into the grains. Ross's face contorted, rage, disbelief, humiliation, etched deep lines across his forehead. Simone Alvarez's phone buzzed in her trembling hand. She stared down at the screen as regulator after regulator demanded immediate audits, frozen assets, full disclosure. Her carefully darkened lashes framed eyes wide with panic. She tapped frantically, voice silent, as her off-the-books, consulting fee empire crumbled in real time. The coral blossoms adorning the pavilion walls seemed to wilt, petals trembling. At the edges, mirroring her collapse, Dion Price lunged for his tablet, fingers scrabbling for a swipe code that no longer existed. The screen stayed obstinately black. His knuckles whitened on the device's edge. No, no, he whispered, voice cracking. The hum of deactivated credentials echoed in the hush that followed Ross's outburst. Dion's expensive cufflinks glinted like fallen stars in the sand, and he kicked a chair, sending it skidding toward a cluster of decorative lanterns. Fiona Chen covered her face with both hands, the satin sheen of her blouse creasing under the pressure. Quiet sobs shook her frame. The unattended bouquet of orchids behind her bowed as though in mourning. Every suppressed HR complaint she'd hidden, every toxic whisper and ignored cry, now floated in the wind like toxic scent, impossible to bury again. Marcus Lyle dove beneath the bench nearest the water's edge, rummaging desperately for the briefcase that once held his savior, shredded memos and white-collar alibis. He yanked at sand-filtered fragments, tears pooling in his throat. His tailored suit, once crisp symbol of legal mastery, was now rumpled and stained, the fabric catching stray grains like confessionals. Vanessa Hartley, still in her rehearsal gown, stood at the fringe of devastation, her bridal veil tangled in the breeze. Her makeup streaked down porcelain cheeks in rivulets as horror replaced pride in her eyes. She opened her mouth, but no protest came. The soft rustle of silk was the only sound as she took a single, trembling step backward. In that fractured moment, I felt the tide of power shift beneath me. Salt-sweet air filled my lungs. My pulse steadied, each beat a quiet drum of vindication. I watched them unravel, my heart heavy with the weight of every sacrifice I'd made to reach this dawn. Then, the mirrored doors at the pavilion's rear swung open with ceremonial gravity. Torchlit sconces along the entrance crackled to life, casting dancers of light across poised faces. Nova Jean's true board of directors, stern, unyielding, filed in. The reflection of their judgment rippled across the glass panels of the pavilion. Each director's expression was unreadable, carved from marble, eyes glinting with unspoken solidarity. Silence swallowed the executive's frantic murmurs. The board's presence was the final, irrevocable verdict. I felt a swell of relief and triumph, tempered by solemn responsibility. Their steps on the sand were measured, footfalls of authority securing a foundation rebuilt on truth. I turned to face them, hands unclasped at my sides. My voice rose above the storm of emotions, clear and unwavering. The evidence you have just witnessed is incontrovertible. These individuals orchestrated fraud, concealed safety violations, and undermined every principle upon which Nova Jean was founded. I propose an external audit, immediate notification of regulatory bodies, and a complete leadership overhaul to restore our integrity. The chairman, a silhouette in pinstripe, voice low and gravelly, rose from his seat on the board's raised dais. He surveyed the broken ranks of executives, then fixed his gaze on me. Dr. Morgan's actions today safeguard Novagene's future, he declared. His words landed like chiseled commands. We stand with her. A measured round of applause followed, first tentative, then resolute, echoing across the palm-fringed cove. The ocean's whisper seemed to join in, waves lapping in a steady ovation. Security personnel, crisp in navy uniforms, advanced. They guided Ross, Simone, Dion, Fiona, and Marcus toward the pavilion's side exit. Ross bit back a curse as he passed me, Simone's sobs turned to pleading whispers, Dion mouthed protests of technicalities, Fiona's shoulders shook under the weight of regret, Marcus's stammered promises of due process trailed behind him like broken chains. Guests paused in mid-conversation, watched in mute astonishment. The distant murmur of their shock rippled like thunder across the sand. I stood on the raised platform, the morning sun illuminating my gray suit, feeling the full breath of victory. Their empire of deceit lay shattered at my feet. The board members exchanged solemn nods as the last of the purged executives disappeared through a cascade of torchlight. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the memory of every early morning lab session, every hidden filing, every surveillance recording settle within me. Novagene's rebirth had begun. With the final echo of their footsteps fading, I lifted my head and inhaled the sea air, sharp and bracing. The crest of triumph washed over me, and I knew this was only the beginning of a new chapter, forged in accountability, transparency, and the unassailable power of truth. Weeks after the pavilion purge, Novagene's name dominated every headline. Industry journals ran banner stories: Phantom founder emerges, Santa Monica showdown at Novagene, millions at stake as regulators close in. Ross Whitman faced a class action lawsuit from investors who lost millions chasing cures that never existed. His glossy reputation turned to ash, as lawyers dug into every inflated marketing claim. Simone Alvarez was subpoenaed by federal prosecutors. Her once secret offshore accounts laid bare for the world to see. Dion Price negotiated a plea deal, admitting to misappropriating proprietary data to fuel side ventures. Fiona Chen's human resources license was suspended, ethics boards convening to review years of silenced harassment claims. Marcus Lyle's law firm was hit with a professional misconduct inquiry, shredded memos and hidden communications resurfacing. In court records, despite the whirlwind, Novagene rebounded with astonishing speed. Nadia Kim, stalwart COO and my former lab partner, stepped in as interim CEO. She immediately dismantled the old guard's legacy, promoting mid-level scientists with integrity, initiating transparent HR channels, and launching an anonymous feedback portal that gave every employee a real voice. Compliance protocols became non-negotiable, monthly audits, randomized expense reviews, and live reporting dashboards replaced hushed corridors and buried accusations. Within a single quarter, investor confidence soared. Stock prices climbed 40%, fueled by announcements of newly funded gene therapies and a publicly accessible research pipeline. Laboratory lights burned late into the night, humming with renewed purpose. Breakthroughs once delayed under the previous regime now arrived weekly: novel CRISPR techniques, precision oncology targets, and scalable production models. The campus itself transformed, ivy-covered walls gave way to glass-walled innovation labs, and the corridors buzzed with collaboration rather than fear. In my restored coastal office, windows framing endless Pacific swells, I keep the thank you notes patients have drawn, children whose rare disease markers have normalized, parents whose hope has been rekindled. I run a hand along the polished oak desk, remembering the countless mornings I sacrificed for this vision. Justice was measured not in punishment alone, but in restoration, restoring trust to patients, restoring credibility to science, and restoring integrity to a company that once teetered on corruption. My own reflection on the window glass looks older, lines softened by purpose. I think of every moment I worked behind the scenes, in laboratories, courtrooms, and secret control rooms, and feel a quiet pride. True power, I realize, is not the glare of public acclaim, but the steadfast conviction to do what's right, even when no one is watching. As the sun rises over the Pacific, I know Novagene's future is secured by transparency and respect. The purge was only the prologue. What comes next is the real story, one of healing, innovation, and the unshakable belief that a single quiet voice can change the world. Nova Jean's resurrection stands as proof that the most powerful forces in any story often lie hidden until the perfect moment. When your worth is underestimated, when the world writes you off as irrelevant or obsolete, remember, patience is your ally, preparation your armor, and precision your weapon. Dr. Celeste Morgan didn't roar the day she unveiled her empire, she whispered, "You forgot one thing," and watched the walls crumble. Her victory wasn't born of impulse, but of years spent building a silent foundation of expertise, gathering irrefutable evidence, and waiting for the tide to turn. Think of every time someone dismissed your ideas, sidelined your potential, or laughed at your dreams. Those moments are seeds of opportunity. Cultivate them with quiet determination. Record the details. Build your skills. Assemble your allies. And when the stage is set, when the world least expects it, step into the light and claim what's yours. If this saga of covert empires and cinematic payback moved you, hit the like button to show your support. Subscribe for more stories that celebrate strategy, resilience, and the triumph of the underestimated. Tap the notification bell so you never miss a moment of high-stakes drama and hard-won victories. Now it's your turn, share in the comments. A time you surprised everyone, maybe even yourself, by revealing your hidden strengths. Who underestimated you? What did you build in the shadows? Your story could be the spark someone else needs to ignite their own comeback. Don't just watch these tales, live them. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Together, we'll celebrate the quiet architects of change, the masters of the unassuming comeback, and the voices that refuse to stay silent. Until our next journey into shadows and surprises, stay vigilant, stay strategic, and remember, the sharpest blade is often the one sheathed in silence.